What I want to talk about this morning, we're going to have a great day. There's going to be a lot of speakers over the course of the day. Tesla Tuesday. Thanks to Bradford and everyone else involved in setting this up. My topic for this morning, at least for the first 5 or 10 minutes, is Tesla stands and Tesla Q. Some small publication called Motor Biscuit did an article about Tesla stands. It was a very typically, as very common with this kind of stuff, it was a very thin article without a lot of substance. And referenced an interview I did with Jason Torchinsky of Jalopnik, where I was accused of a fierce attack and defend behavior that apparently offended. That apparently that's a Tesla stand behavior, is fiercely attacking and defending the stupidity of Tesla haters. So, and I spent this morning watching some other Tesla haters, Matt Farah and a couple others, and I invited a couple people to come on my channel and discuss their views, since they feel so strongly and they're so confident. And Matt, in particular, he's the Smoking Tire podcast, has engaged other Tesla fans in conversation or argument. So why not come on my channel and let's see how it goes? Matt apparently thinks that Elon Musk is a fraud. I don't know. I just watched the 14th landing of an orbital rocket booster, the same orbital rocket booster out of over 100 landings. I don't know that frauds land orbital rocket boosters. So I find I think Tesla Q's gotten a little quieter, or maybe they're like hiding out. Maybe they're like I don't know what the theory is. I'm curious what other people think of the status of Tesla Q now that the story that Tesla Q, for those who don't know, TSLAQ stands for, the Q stands for bankruptcy. The idea that Tesla as a company is going to go bankrupt. I think we can safely say the Tesla is going to go bankrupt story is dead. So it's kind of curious. And Matt Farah a year ago said that Tesla can't make cars, or maybe it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, he said Tesla can't make cars. I think we've pretty well established now that Tesla can manufacture cars, and can manufacture cars in volume, and seems to be pretty darn good at making cars now. And then you look at the companies that these Tesla haters touted as the competition is coming, and the struggles they've had with GM making 26 EVs in a quarter, and Lucid's troubles, and Rivian's doing okay, but they've still got some challenges to overcome. And there's all these other, the competition is coming stories, and then they've got their obsession with Waymo and Cruise, which can't scale, can't scale, can't scale, can't scale, and they refuse to see that Tesla's method of dealing with FSD by having large numbers of people drive the cars. I'm waiting to see. Does anybody know of any? If you're going to join the stage at some point and talk, I'm curious to hear if anybody has seen a lot of fan videos of Waymo and Cruise, or Blue Cruise, Ford's Blue Cruise, or Super Cruise from GM. Where are the fan videos of how awesome my self-driving car is from all the competition? I drive FSD beta. I've done a few videos of my car driving. That's not my general approach to things, but I have done a few videos. I'm massively impressed with FSD beta. I know it's not there yet. There's this Tesla Q notion that all of us think that FSD is already like fully autonomous, and we can go to sleep in our cars while the car is driving, which none of us actually believe. So I'm just kind of I've got a lot of different topics I like to talk about, and I particularly like to tear down the Tesla haters. And I think one of a more recent phenomenon, maybe this isn't recent, but something I've noticed recently, I've done some videos on it, is large channels attacking Tesla. So Sophia, what's her name? Sorella Amore Finance did a video attacking Tesla and electric vehicles about batteries, and totally ignoring that as far as the environmental degradation caused by mining for, say, cobalt or then the consequences for child labor, apparently unaware that the drilling for oil and transport of oil and refining of oil and all these other things in the fossil fuel industry might have environmental consequences as well. What was the other one recently? It was this guy in Canada. There's a channel called Fortnite that has 1.5 million subscribers, and he went after Tesla Autopilot based on there were two incidents where Teslas rear-ended motorcycles late at night on interstate highways, and they were close together. They were about 2 weeks apart. So therefore, Teslas hit motorcycles. It was like, well, wait a minute. Autopilot's been around since, I don't know, 2014, 2016, something like that. The current vision version of Autopilot's been around for 2 years. How many motorcycles have Teslas hit? And I drive Autopilot, I drive FSD Beta. It's these motorcycles. So you get these guys with very thinly thought through premises. The Fortnite one in particular, for those who aren't YouTubers, don't know this. If your video is longer than 8 minutes, you get to have YouTube insert ads in the middle and you make more money on your video. So the Fortnite video was 8.5 minutes. And there were so many pauses and so many slow moments that the guy could have made the video with his content. He could have made the video in 3 minutes because it was so little. It was so thin on content. But, call it 5 or 6 minute video. And somehow he stretched it out in 8.5 minutes so he could jam his viewers with another ad. And I'm not saying I've never pushed a 7 minute and 50 second video to 8 minutes and 5 seconds, but I've never pushed a 5 minute video to 8 minutes. We're as YouTubers, at some point we might play a game like that here or there. Mostly, if you check my channel, I probably got videos that are like 7.5 minutes, and I just don't care. But it's striking to see the Tesla hate and how the Tesla hate has changed. But they will still maintain that Elon is a fraud. They will still maintain that Tesla is a Ponzi scheme. That's what Matt Farah called it a year ago. He said that Tesla's a Ponzi scheme. Really? It's a Ponzi scheme? So I'm curious. I don't see any hands up. If people have anything they want to say, Bradford, do you have any thoughts on my rant so far?
No, yes, a little bit. I think it's mainly status games. Naval Ravikant talks about people playing status games. So you tear down the people that are higher up than you to try and gain status, and you're also talking about one of the most dramatic things happening in society today is Elon Musk, rising to become the richest person in the world, and electric vehicles disrupting gas cars, and it's a huge change, and there's a lot of drama and a lot of happening around it. So that's the kind of game people play.
Yeah, I think there's people who are addicted to internal combustion engines, and they resent electric vehicles coming along. And those things are, they can't go very far. They're not very fast, or they're like golf carts. And all of a sudden, you have the Model S Plaid, which, I mean, I think Teslas for a while have been destroying internal combustion engine cars, but the Model S Plaid, and I have an X Plaid for those who don't know, they pretty much destroy any car on the road in terms of acceleration. The S Plaid, I think, has one of the best performances at the Nürburgring, which is more than just acceleration. And are we still range limited to an extent? Yes. I think if you understand how to drive a Tesla on a long trip, you realize that having to stop every 200 or 250 miles to charge your car is just not that big of a deal. But are there things we would like to be better about Teslas? Sure. And I think one of the other things I've noticed is, especially like the Sorel Lamore finance video, is they'll put Tesla or Elon Musk in the headline or the thumbnail.
Yeah,
The
I think
thumbnail.
it's best. I think right now it's best if you bring in Tesla to South Africa. So we don't have Tesla here. Electrical cars are very much rare here. So we only have this one, the Porsche, this one, Taycan and whatnot, and which are expensive. So I think the invasion of electrical cars is a very good idea, and then eventually they have to be back brought to South Africa, which should be a good idea.
Do you see a lot of anti-Tesla sentiment or anti-electric vehicle sentiment in South Africa, or is it just not really a topic?
I didn't hear you. You can come again, sir.
Yeah, you said you're, I think, in South Africa or you're somewhere in Africa, and you mentioned that there's Taycans and there's maybe some other EVs, but there's no Teslas. I'm just curious.
Yeah,
Here in America, hang on. Here in America, there is this there's this group of people that are fairly significant, loose group or tight group, that are very critical of Tesla and very critical of electric vehicles. I'm just curious if in South Africa there's significant media or public criticism of Tesla or electric vehicles.
No, there's no any bad public criticism about it. It's just that there are no like the Teslas are not here. There's no any plant that produces Tesla. So yeah, that is why we don't have electrical cars here. And then here in South Africa the fuel price is it's very much high. So I believe if the they are brought to South Africa, the electrical cars, so as Teslas like, so it will be much cheaper to live like that. Yeah, something of that nature.
What do so what do people what the people who hate Tesla here in America, they will refer to Elon Musk as a fraud or a or something like that. Do does
No,
Elon have a public reputation in South Africa? Do people think he's great? Do
mm,
people think he's a traitor? What do people think
no,
about
yeah,
him?
yeah. The thing is, he's original from here, right? So we much praising him. So there's no any bad criticisms about him. So I think they just have to bring Tesla into South Africa. So he's praised here. Yeah, he's something. He's an icon here in South Africa. So I think if they can bring maybe a plant to produce those cars, or instead, because if they are made from the American and shipped to South Africa. There they are right left steerings, and here in South Africa we're using there it's left steering. Here is the right steering operation. So I think if they bring the plant here and then we produce Teslas, I think yeah, it will work.
Okay, so there's a common thing I hear that Tesla should produce cars in this country or that country or whatever. And Tesla faces this challenge. A Tesla factory produces a high volume of cars. A lot of car companies make car factories that produce cars in relatively low volume compared to what Tesla does. So for Tesla to locate a factory somewhere, it has to be a place with a big market. So right now, Tesla factories are in China, which is the world's largest car market, the United States, which is the second largest car market, and Germany, Europe. If you consider Europe as a whole, Europe is the third largest car market. I I think somewhat controversially said the next Gigafactory should be in Japan because it's by country the third largest car market and by region the fourth largest car market. So the challenge with locating a Tesla factory in a country like South Africa is the the potential number of buyers of Tesla cars in South Africa is not large enough to support a Tesla factory. In fact, the whole continent of Africa probably does not have enough ability to buy Tesla cars to buy the volume of Tesla cars that a factory would produce. That it doesn't make sense for Tesla to produce a factory there yet. Although I think the next generation factory with robo taxis that might be viable in Africa.
Can you correct me? Is electrical car much expensive than just a fuel consumption car?
The current model, let's say the Tesla Model 3, which is the least expensive car, is more expensive a little bit. It depends what car you compare it to. If you compare it to a Toyota Camry, then a Tesla is more expensive. But I would say a Tesla Model 3 is more comparable to say a BMW 3 Series, and then they're roughly this. In other words, if you consider it a luxury car, then it's competitive in price with comparable luxury cars. But the plan is to improve manufacturing, improve the technology, and ultimately produce cars that are less expensive or at least competitive with similar cars that are not luxury cars. So there should be a next generation vehicle that's currently known as the Robo Taxi. That we're hopeful that there will be versions of that will be competitive with, let's say, a Toyota Camry. But the other side of that is instead of thinking about making cars that are inexpensive for poorer people to buy, I think Tesla's long-term strategy is to design cars that drive themselves, and rather than people buying cars, people buy rides. When you need a car, you press a button on your phone, a car comes and picks you up and takes you where you want to go, and you don't bother owning a car anymore. And the cost of the ride, the cost of living this lifestyle where you just ride in cars that you summon, ends up being less than the cost of owning your own car. That's the long-term goal for Tesla as I see it. Bradford, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I hope there's a long term plan for developing markets like South America and Africa. whether it's with compact SUV or with Robo Taxi. I think it'll come to that eventually. The focus is going to be on the the markets where there's just much more concentration of wealth for now, unfortunately. Warren, I'm wondering, could you talk and go ahead and hang out with us at Seki? But Warren, could you talk a little bit about your Florida idea for a Gigafactory?
Sure. Well, before I do that, I want to talk about something else. I'm sorry. Just the big news that I should have mentioned at the beginning is there was an article, I think it was in Tasmanian. Somebody did an article talking about Martin Viecha, or Business Insider, Martin Viecha speaking somewhere, and he said there's a lot of different things in what he said, but one of the things he mentioned was the robo-taxi platform. So there's this vehicle that Tesla's been talking about. Elon said they're going to start building robo-taxi factories in 2024, or maybe they're going to start producing robo-taxis in 2024. But the reference to it as a platform is something I've been saying for a while. The next generation vehicle that Tesla produces will not be a car. It will be a platform, and we will probably see a van on that platform, and we will see a low-cost robo-taxi type vehicle on that platform. I think we're going to see a variety of vehicles on that platform. But getting to your point, your question, Giga Orlando. So there's this open question: where will Tesla locate its next factory, or factories, I would say, because it's obvious they have to build more than one new factory. But at the annual shareholder meeting, Elon said we're going to be announcing a next Gigafactory location soon. Where do you think it should be? And a lot of people yelled Canada, and he said, "Well, I am Canadian or whatever." He's got Canadian heritage to him. I think May was born in Canada. His mother was born in Canada, and he lived in Canada for a bit of his life. So I personally don't think Canada makes sense, but what do I know? But I thought about Orlando, and I'll tell you why I think Orlando is a good place for a Tesla factory. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I made my case for why Giga Orlando would make sense. When Tesla chose Berlin and Austin for gigafactories, one of the key factors that Elon talked about was building a factory in a place where people want to be. And this is, I think, a lesson from Giga Nevada. It's hard for Tesla to get employees for Giga Nevada because the factory's sort of in the middle of nowhere. It's a little close to Reno, Nevada, which is not a big city. There's not a lot for people to do. This is actually one of the problems with Starbase, the southern tip of Texas, where SpaceX is building this, currently building Starship. Is there's not a lot of population around the southern tip of Texas. The nearest large city is 6 hours away. There's no major universities near Brownsville, Texas. So it's hard, and I think even the underlying electricity infrastructure might be somewhat inadequate for some of the things they want to do. So really, SpaceX has decided to shift space Starship operations long term to Canaveral, and if you watch NASA Spaceflight Channel, they may have completed building the final section of the launch tower, and they've got the chopstick arms ready to go, and they're building the manufacturing building for Starship. All this is happening now. So the case for Giga Orlando is a place people want to live. Florida, for those who are not American, may not know this, Florida is the state that more people are moving to than I think any other, although Texas is up there. People are leaving New York, they're leaving California, and they're coming here. And Orlando has a couple of particular attractions that are sort of stand out beyond most other places, most notably Disney World. And along with Disney World, Universal Studios Orlando, there's a lot of theme parks. So a lot of people come to Orlando, and it's not just people from other states that come to Orlando to go to Disney World. Disney World is hugely popular within Florida. They have special packages. So if you're a Florida resident, you get a discount. You get like an annual pass cheaper. So, and then you add to that, you want to locate your facility where you have a lot of infrastructure, a lot of support, a lot of things for people to do, where you have universities you can draw employees from. So Orlando is, I think, less than an hour from Gainesville, which is University of Florida. Orlando has University of Central Florida, which may be the largest university in the country. It's certainly close. University of South Florida is in Tampa, not far away. University of Tampa is not far away. University of North Florida is maybe 2 hours away. There's a tremendous amount of infrastructure around Orlando, and Orlando is it's a very tech forward city. There's this place called Lake Nona. I just went to Lake Nona and met up with some people from Arcimoto. Arcimoto has like their second largest operation. Arcimoto's based in Eugene, Oregon, but their second largest operation is in Lake Nona, Orlando, Florida, which is like this, super new city, like high tech city that they're building, high tech, quote city that they're building that's going to have their own autonomous fleet. The roads are designed for autonomy and there's like, I don't know, super fast internet like in the roadways and everything. I'm kind of making it up as I go along, but they're pushing this as this sort of new high tech area, and they're building out a city based on it. And I just think there's a lot of innovation in Orlando, a lot of cool things happening, and it's basically just a fun place to live, and it's about an hour from Canaveral. Depending on where you are in Orlando, it might be 45 minutes to an hour to get to Canaveral. So for Elon, like if he's going to travel to factory locations, wouldn't it be nice if SpaceX's factory location was right next door? SpaceX, Starship operations were right next door. That's one of the reasons why everything's locating in Austin, Texas. You've got SpaceX facilities, Boring Company facilities, Neuralink facilities, and obviously the Tesla Gigafactory all in Austin. So I think there's a lot of great reasons why Giga Orlando would make sense. Bradford, do you have any thoughts on Giga Orlando? Oh, actually, hang on. Let me invite up Tesla Noma. Sorry, Tesla Noma. I'm inviting Tesla Noma up. Do you have whether it's about Giga Orlando or something else? I don't know if you're able to connect.
Yeah, while they're connecting, they can't hear. But Tesla Noma, go ahead and share, even if it's not about Giga Florida.
Yeah,
Hey.
whatever's on your mind.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Hey Warren, Sal here. Yeah, as a fellow Floridian, I have to completely, concur with everything you said. And plus, unlike where you just moved from and where I currently am in Southeast Florida, there's a lot of land that is to be left for development. So for a growing workforce, if you look around Orlando, there's already tons of infrastructure being put down, a lot of housing that's happening out there, and especially if you look at that area east of Orlando, going towards Canaveral, there is large parcels of land that are available for sale. So everything you said, Warren, plus I just wanted to throw that in there. That I think there's a lot of potential, but importantly, there is land available to realize that potential. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for those who aren't familiar with Florida geography, the southeast part of the state, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach, which is Miami-Dade County, Broward County, and Palm Beach County, are basically built out. There's just not a lot of extra land. They're crowded. Some people like me are fleeing Southeast Florida. It's still a very popular place to go, and I've heard people suggest Giga Miami. And I don't, that the nice thing about Orlando is it's like 3 or 4 hours closer to the rest of the United States than, and the biggest challenge for Giga Orlando is, well, it's not really that great of a location to reach the northeastern United States, but it's still probably 1,000 miles closer than Austin. So on that point, but yeah, there's just not a lot of extra land in South Florida for Tesla to be able to buy like hundreds of acres and build something. Where there's ridiculous amount. If you look east of Orlando towards Canaveral, there's just this like nothingness. There's just not a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of opportunity to develop land there. And like I said, Lake Nona, I forgot to mention this. I was told that Apple is building a whole campus in Lake Nona. So Florida is a place that's attracting a lot of people. Orlando's a place that's attracting a lot of people. I think it's even conceivable that Giga Orlando would really be in Brevard County, which is where I am, which is Canaveral, Titusville. Brevard County might be close enough to Orlando to call it Giga Orlando, and you're still like an hour drive from Disney if you're in Brevard County. I think there's a lot of land here, and there's a lot of Brevard County is probably more pro-development than Orlando, even though Orlando itself is pretty pro-development. Oh, Bradford, go ahead.
So can you add, okay, Fred was having some issues, Fred Hassan. I wasn't able, there's an error I was having trying to add you. So I have two concerns about Florida, Warren. One concern, which Tesla can easily handle, is I'm guessing the factory would have a different foundation type. So with each Gigafactory, Tesla's had to do the foundation different They had a sandy bottom, which they weren't allowed to pile drive for Giga Berlin. In Texas, they had the gravel. They had to do the geopure work to strengthen the foundation. And then China is more straightforward. Florida, you have a lot of swamp in between Orlando and the coast. I think there's a lot of sand, though, so maybe.
Sure. Let me just address that. Florida's a big state, and Florida. I think people this comes up with the Boring Company and doing tunnels in Florida. Florida is not like floating on water. There's limestone underneath. I did an interview on my channel with David Wilcox, who's a geologist, we talked about Boring Company tunnels in Florida. That's not a challenge. I'm sure any place you're going to build a factory is going to be an issue, but they're building a Starship factory right now and a Starship launch tower on Canaveral, which is basically on the water. So I believe there's plenty of manufacturing operations all over Florida. I'm not saying manufacturing is the biggest industry in Florida. Disney World is in Orlando, and there's a lot of heavy plant, a lot of heavy investment, a lot of capital investment, a lot of structures in Disney. So I don't believe that the demands of a Gigafactory are greater than the demands of, let's say, a Disney park, a Disney office building, or a theme park. So I'm not aware of any challenges that would make it impossible to manufacture here. They're, like I said, they're building a Starship manufacturing facility and launch facilities at Canaveral, and there have been launch facilities at Canaveral for 50, 60, 70 years. So, Fred, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, and it's also true that Disney's built on a swamp. Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, excuse me. If it's okay, back to what you were originally saying when you came on about the Tesla Q and the YouTube videos and by other people and all that type of stuff. My feelings about that overall is that I don't really think it's having much of an impact. I think that when you are big in anything, whether it's whether you're a sports figure or a sports team or whatever, you're going to get this. And when you look at Tesla's numbers, like, they really can't get much better. Whenever something has an effect on you, somebody saying something bad about you, or, like, let's take, I mean, a very obvious thing. Let's just you could replace it with anything, but let's talk about O.J. Simpson, for example. When all this stuff happens, the effect that it has is on his numbers. People can say, oh, he didn't do it or whatever, but it has an effect on the numbers. So none of this has really had an effect on Tesla's numbers. I mean, it can't really get much better, especially since you're talking about a vehicle, something that people don't go through every day. It's not like, you're changing they're selling shirts or something, they're selling cars. So I don't think that, and sometimes when there's something that's a scam and you buy it, we've all bought things that seemed like it was great, and then you get it and it's nothing, but they're still selling them. But over a course of time, that stops. That rumor gets out there and it stops. And then I think the other big thing about Tesla, the biggest thing about Tesla, and I think everybody in the audience can relate to this, is there's nothing more random of a survey than us taking people for a ride. I mean, I get it. Some of the people that you're taking for a ride in your car, they're interested in buying one and they want to see it or whatever. But I think all of us that are in the audience have, run into somebody, or you just had a friend over or family or whatever, and they had no intention of buying a Tesla, and they weren't even aware of what the car is.
Fred, you're breaking up.
Okay,
Your signal's breaking up, Fred.
I want to give some people a little context while we wait on Fred to reconnect. Some of you may be new to Fred Hassan. Fred's a successful business owner, and he's owned some of the best cars in the world. You name it. Ferrari, Porsche, Lamborghini, etc. And I haven't talked with Fred in a while. I'm curious if Fred's still in love with his plaid. I'm going to bring Fred right back here. Go ahead, Fred.
I'm not sure if Fred has a good connection, so why don't we give Botswana a chance?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Try it now, Fred.
Yeah. No, presently, yeah, I still have my Plaid. I still have my X. I did buy a 2022 911 Turbo S because Tesla doesn't have any convertibles, and I'm not giving up my convertible. But just getting back to where I just want to say one other thing. Where getting back to where I left off on the random thing. And where everybody can relate to that and to the car. So I think the two biggest things the biggest thing they have to deal with is that most of the people, anybody who gets in a car is very unaware of all the things that Tesla does, or what the car does. And I think that's the biggest thing that's even, making it go over the top. Well, it already is over the top, but making the sales be even bigger. But I don't think any of us have ever had all these random people, rich, poor, black, white, every segment of society get in the car. And that's as random a survey as can be, and had anybody say, oh, this is just, this is stupid, or this is a piece of shit or whatever. I just think that what we're dealing with the Tesla Q, no matter what happens, and no matter how good the item is to sell, that Tesla Q stuff is going to come with it, but I don't think it's having an effect.
Okay, so let me just push back on you a little bit. I agree with you that Tesla's numbers are great, but I think Tesla Q's effect is small. But I have definitely talked to there is a view that is somewhat common throughout some parts of the population that EVs don't have range, that Tesla, that Elon Musk is a con artist. There's these voices. Now, I'm not saying I think the positive views for Tesla greatly outweigh the negatives. That's why they keep selling as many cars as they can make. I think in the long run, making great cars, and your neighbor takes you for a ride in his car, or you see your neighbor has one of these cars, I think that's going to have a bigger positive effect than any negative effect from these haters. But they started before Tesla was big, and they've been bashing Tesla for a long time. And one of the funny things is they don't let go of their pre-existing bullshit. But sorry, Bradford, go ahead. And I want to let Botswana get a chance.
Yeah, so I'll just complete Fred's point, and Fred, go ahead and hang out with us as we do move to Botswana. But I think the awareness of the whole Tesla ecosystem is going to just continue over time as more and more people become new Tesla owners, and Tesla owners continue to I can't say the word. Continue to preach.
Proselytize.
Yeah, thank you. Botswana.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. A big fan of Warren as well as many of you here. I just wanted to push back on the Florida location for Gigafactory, perhaps with a couple of questions. I think some of the key determinants of location for a Gigafactory that would manufacture batteries as well as various form factors of vehicles would be proximity to consumers, suppliers, as well as to potential to export, cars or batteries as needed, depending on market demand conditions. Considering there is already a southern huge gigafactory in Texas and one on the West Coast, wouldn't it make sense more for the next one, at least imminently, to be on the East Coast? Availability to ports as well as availability and proximity to consumers and suppliers.
Sure. So let me take that on. Orlando is halfway between Port Canaveral and the port of Tampa, and it's not far from Jacksonville, and I suppose there's the port of Miami a little ways away. Florida is the East Coast, but I agree that you could get closer to the Northeast. But don't forget that Florida is the third largest state by population. California is number one, Texas is number two, Florida is number three. Historically, we've thought of New York as a large state, but New York is declining. The Northeast's population is declining relative to Florida and Texas. And Florida in particular is growing really fast. We're also very close to Atlanta, which is a large city. The Southeast is big. And anyway, although they're both in the South, Austin and Florida, Florida is still like 1,000 miles closer to the Northeast than Austin. I drove from Austin to Florida. It was 24 hours. I literally drove 20, not to get to, that was past Orlando. So Orlando was probably 20 hours nonstop driving, including charging stops, but nonstop driving basically from Austin to Orlando. So that's pretty far. It's not like they're next door. I have, one of the theories is that you want to be near battery manufacturers, and Panasonic's building a battery factory in Kansas City, Kansas. So somewhere near Kansas might make sense to be near battery materials. Whether Tesla would build, they don't have the battery materials here in Florida. You're not mining for nickel and lithium. As far as I know, I don't think there's any lithium mining in Florida, and you're not mining for nickel here in our limestone. Whatever the limestone under the state, that's not where you're going to mine for it. So, but in terms of proximity to consumers, Florida is a very, very big state for Tesla consumption. Georgia is right next door. Alabama is a reasonably good target market. And then you just go north to South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. These are big markets, and Florida's not that far from them. But I think the biggest hurdle is there a Florida supply chain to fit a Florida factory? I don't think there was a supply chain really in Austin yet, and they're building that up so they can build a supply chain up here.
So there's a big supply chain in South Carolina, North Carolina for the auto market in general. Alabama's pretty big. Another argument for Florida is that pro-business. I'm curious. I'm curious about the labor market in Florida, Warren.
Yeah, so you have, like I said before, you have University of Central Florida, which is the largest university in the country. You have University of Florida. You have University of South Florida. There's a ton of universities. The population is growing fast. If you need a labor force to come to your factory, and your factory's in Sparks, Nevada, it's hard to get people to move there. It's not hard to find people who want to move to Florida. It's a fantastic place to live. I mean, it is, hot and humid in the summer, right? Depending on where you are, it's not as hot as Austin. Austin actually gets hotter. It's more humid. But for those who don't know that, like Austin gets hotter, like the top temperature, I don't know, it's Celsius, but the top temperature in Fahrenheit would frequently go over 100 degrees in Austin, where it rarely goes much above 90 here in Florida. It just feels really humid because the humidity is so high. We're so close to, I don't fully understand the basis for it, but it's just a very humid state. But, we don't have winter. Like, I haven't scraped ice off my windshield in like 12 years. 12 years, 11 years, 12 years. There's so much great stuff about Florida. There's a lot to do. What we don't have is hills. We don't have mountains or hills. I mean, Orlando has sort of something that looks like hills, maybe, but when you're from New York State or California, we don't have hills here in Florida. It's a very flat place. But there's tons to do. You can go kayaking. There's beaches on both sides of the state. We probably have more coastline than California, because it's such a, there's so much to do here. There's so many great things here. So lots of people are coming here.
There's a lot of wealth in Florida too, as you ended on. A lot of people want to retire to Florida. The wealthier people can afford to. So that helps from a consumer standpoint. How about we go to timeline, Warren?
Just really quick, I just want to mention that while there are some very wealthy people and there's some very expensive housing here in Florida, there's also a lot of low-cost housing here in Florida. So if I wanted to buy a house for under $300,000 within, 20 minutes of where I am now, I could do that. I'm currently looking at townhomes, not like a few blocks off the ocean in Cape Canaveral, that are around $350,000 for a 3-bedroom townhome with a garage. So, and that's just a few blocks from the ocean. And a beach view condo is $500,000, even $450,000 for a beach view condo potentially. So, and then there's definitely places where you can buy a house for like a single family home for $200,000. So the cost of housing is still fairly inexpensive in places in Florida, not everywhere. There's places where it's still very expensive as well. But timeline, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello. I'm sorry. Hello, everyone. The funny thing is we can choose lines where we can go with it. Uh, and the technology that we are going with now, we just started with it, and the technology takes time when we can produce more. Yes, of course, Tesla is starts with cars and rockets now, but the thing is, Tesla is not just a car company. Tesla is a bigger than that, and uh, what I mean bigger than that is just not gonna produce only cars and sun panels. No, it's going big, but the thing is, we have a problem right now, and the problem is the not the AI they no, it's actually we have many AI and different versions, and ever and the I'd say uh, when they are connected, they can see everything. Yes, maybe we think no, we have to make it learn. Yes, it will learn at the time it will learn, but it's always connected. So it's like a human that you when you're born you don't know how to stop. You learn from it, but there is two ways to learn by seeing and to learn with your brain that you understand and you hear it. The technology is the same. It will see. It's yes, they are using cameras and not lines, and they are using the detection that they can understand. But the codes are different. When they are connected, they can understand everything. Yes, it has to learn from itself, like we are learning from ourselves all the time. Um, it will learn, and over time, it can choose. It's programmed not to to understand. It will understand us, but it can choose. And the problem is now we are facing wars, electricity problems, and technology problems, because even if we fix the war, there's a technology problem. But if we don't fix the war, there is still a bigger and bigger problem that we are facing right now. And in the future, if we didn't fix that, the smallest problem, it will become a bigger problem in the timeline. And yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
All right, so thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the AI is that's probably a topic for another room. I'm very fascinated. I'm fascinated by Tesla's efforts in machine learning, artificial intelligence, self-driving, but I think that's probably beyond the scope of what we talked about in the room so far. I do think it's a huge thing. I think there's a lot of engineering talent in Florida, so it may be hard to attract. I don't think it's super hard, but you may have, if Tesla wants to recruit the best engineers, and some of them are coming out of University of Florida, and I should mention University of Miami is also a top and elite university. It may be somewhat difficult to attract Floridians to go to Austin when they have good work here. So that may be a way of attracting the engineering talent pool that's fairly strong here in Florida. Just a thought. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to address.
You also have Georgia Tech nearby, North Carolina, Durham, and I'm guessing there's
Duke.
people that live in New York that want to live in Florida, even as young folks.
Yeah, well, that's the thing when people talk about is there an adequate labor force in Florida? Number one, yes, there's a huge labor force in Florida, and number two, it's not hard to attract people to move here because they're coming here anyway. They're coming here without Tesla jobs. I actually, by the way, I think that SpaceX is going to be scaling up dramatically in Canaveral. They are building them. I didn't realize they'd made as much progress. I just saw this video on NASA spaceflight yesterday that they have really made some progress on building the manufacturing facility for Starship. And I think ultimately you're going to see 10,000 employees at Canaveral working on building starships and launching starships, and the Falcon 9, as long as Falcon 9 continues to fly, that doing that. And one of the other things that Elon likes to do with Tesla and SpaceX and maybe his other companies is cross pollination. That if you're a SpaceX engineer and you have some knowledge about something that Tesla's doing, they bring you over to help with that. And if SpaceX needs help with something, a Tesla engineer might go over. And if you want to work for Tesla and SpaceX at the same time, they find ways of accommodating people to work for both. Vatsvana, go ahead.
Hi, Warren. Thanks. I wanted to piggyback on your earlier thought or earlier comment about robotaxi platforms. I'm just curious. I'm very inspired by the form factor of Zoox, ability to go bi-directionally, doors, sliding doors, more volume inside the vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. So this platform that you were mentioning earlier, are we expecting that platform to be somewhat like how Zoox has, with no steering wheel, just seats and a usable space for either for working or family fun, etc. Inside the car? How do we expect that to progress? Just curious.
Sure. So no one really knows what the robo taxi is going to be yet. They've been literally keeping it under wraps. When they announced it at Battery Day, they had a tarp. They had a picture of a vehicle with a tarp over it. So my theory is, if Martin Viecha referred to it as a platform, then this is something I've been saying for a while, that the robo taxi isn't one vehicle. That if you are going to build a robo taxi network, you need different vehicles to serve different functions. You may want something that's focused just on passenger travel. You might want something that can tow, although I think that's what Cybertruck is for. You might want something that can carry cargo. You might want something that can carry 12 passengers versus something that. So a robo taxi that can carry, let's say, 4 passengers is going to be a lot less expensive to operate in terms of efficiency, per mile, than a 12-passenger vehicle. But if you can fill a 12-passenger vehicle, that's going to be more efficient in a per passenger mile. So I have a hunch that we're going to see like a minibus, we're going to see a cargo van, we're going to see a smaller, like 4 or 5 passenger vehicle, robo taxi. All of these things, built off a common platform, is a theory. I don't know that Elon likes the common platform theory, but some substantial commonality between the different vehicles where the underpinnings are the same or very similar might make a lot of sense. Scott, Vatsvana, did I answer your question?
Yes, thanks. If I may, just a quick follow on for anyone. Just curious, what percent of the 20 million cars, that's projected for 2030 could be robotaxis? Are robotaxis even part of those car
Sure.
volume?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is fairly straightforward. What we're looking at right now is the 4 existing factory locations: Austin, Berlin, uh, Shanghai, and Fremont. I think collectively those 4 locations, as they are now with the factories that are built or that we know that are coming, like Shanghai's building a second factory soon, I think they could probably together reach about 8 million vehicles, and that's the non-robotaxi vehicles. Unless the Shanghai factory that's coming is going to build robotaxi. So you have 12 million left to reach 20 million. So my theory would be roughly that it's going to be 12 million will be robotaxis. And I like if a current generation Gigafactory can produce 2 million cars, let's say a Giga Texas or a Giga Shanghai can ultimately produce 2 million cars. Elon has said the next generation factory will be more efficient. It'll be use space more efficiently. It'll produce vehicles at a higher velocity. So I think if they were going to build a factory that's the same size as Shanghai or Texas, then we might expect a robo-taxi factory to produce 4 million vehicles. I'm just making up a number. And if you had one robo-taxi factory in China, one in the United States, and one in Europe, you would be producing, and each one of them produced 4 million vehicles. That would be 12 million robo-taxis plus 8 million vehicles from the existing factories, and you would have your 12 million robo-taxis plus 8 million other vehicles to reach 20 million. That's a theory. I think there's another theory that the robo-taxi factories will be more productive on a volume basis, but they'll be smaller footprint. So the individual robotaxi factories will cost less to build, and in order to reach certain markets like maybe even Japan or Latin America, you might need to not produce 4 million vehicles because that market can't absorb that many vehicles. So you might need to produce a factory that can only produce 500,000 vehicles or 1 million vehicles in order to reach certain markets like Australia or India or smaller markets that aren't the huge markets that we have in China, the US, and Europe. Scott, you wanted to speak?
Okay, yes. Hi, Warren. This is Scott. Yeah, I just want to follow up on your thesis about Orlando. And while Florida may be known as the Sunshine State, recently it seems to be the water state. So we don't have any shortage of water falling out of the sky like the West Coast in Texas and Berlin. So that's not a problem. Also, the Orlando airport, both domestically and internationally, is one of the best connected airports in the world. So there's no problem getting people in and out of there. I looks like if you go along the beach line, they're building a rail line between Orlando and Port Canaveral. So that would certainly help with transportation of goods or anything like that could be going on between the port. And finally, what a lot of people probably don't know is that Lockheed Martin Missile Systems is based in Orlando, and actually Universal Studios is a former test range for Lockheed Martin. And that if I was a foreign spying organization, I would go on the rides in SeaWorld, because when you get up there, you have a really good view of it. So as far as like technology and engineers and everything, you have a lot of them already in the Orlando area, as well as other facilities around Florida. So yeah, I think your thesis of Orlando kind of fits in. It's kind of like the Austin to Boca Chica kind of relationship, in that Elon can be in both places at the same time if you wanted to. So you could have definitely a factory there, as well as good proximity to Space Coast.
Yeah, and sorry, a couple things. Number one, on the water point, if you Google Rainbow Springs State Park, which is a place I've been, it's a spectacular, borderline paradise. There's a spring that produces a ridiculous volume of water, and it's one of many springs in Florida that produce an insane volume. There's a river. Excuse my French, but there's a fucking river that's produced by this like a big river, and it's like people like go to the top of the where the spring, I forget what you call it, where the water comes out, and they put in inner tubes, or they get in little kayaks and they paddle down, and it's like you just sort of float down this river, and the river water is cool. It's like 72 or 75 degrees or something like that. Florida's hot and humid, so it's kind of cool to dip in this river, and there's lots of springs like that, so there's lots of water. The other thing the other thing I wanted to mention about Florida, and I'm sorry to get political here, but the Governor DeSantis is approaching an election, and Elon seems to like Governor DeSantis. And Elon's going to be here supposedly in October for an event with Tesla Club leaders in Orlando, and I could see Elon announcing Giga Orlando at that event. It would give Governor DeSantis a boost heading into his election in November. I think there's a political argument for it. And, plain and simple, if you remember the struggles that Tesla had in Fremont with Alameda County trying to shut the factory down, Florida is not going to do that to a Tesla factory. Florida is going to support Tesla operations. Florida, like it or not, you can dislike DeSantis or you can dislike this, but Florida's arguably been the freest state in the country. And if you want to operate a factory somewhere, you want to operate a business somewhere, Florida's been one of the best states to run a business in the last few years.
Yeah, and I also agree with you on the thesis about affordable housing around the Orlando area. There are plenty of houses that you can get that are under 200,000. So unlike right on the coast, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but compared to other parts of the country like the Northeast, you can get a lot more house down here for a lot less with a pool.
So Bradford, we've got like 5 minutes left. Do you want to let the audience know about the next room, the next space?
Yeah, sure. We'll in this space in about 4 minutes or so. We'll start a new one, and Josh's blonde and myself will be heading up that space. Love for you all to continue to join us there.
And the plan, Bradford, is to do this every Tuesday. We're going to have a series of speakers, a series of spaces with a host, and then discussion about Tesla every Tuesday. Tesla Tuesday. That's the plan.
That's the plan. We'll see how it goes, see how sustainable it is. Yep.
And please follow the host of the room, which is Tesla 247 with an underscore between TSLA and 247 but in the upper left corner of the room, you can see that account, and please follow it. And while you're at it, please follow me, Bradford, and anyone else that you love in this room. Ty-C, Tesla, Herbert, and Matt Smith in the room. And Farzad's in the room. These are other. And Josh's Blonde is in the room. So please, anybody you follow, we appreciate your that you're following us. My account on Twitter is a little more controversial than everybody else's. I talk about stuff I shouldn't talk about, so maybe not me. So let me. I'm just going to see, like, Scott, was there anything else you wanted to say before I move on?
No, I'm good, Warren. Thanks.
Okay. And Vatsvana, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I'm good. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay. Well, I wanted to thank everybody for coming, and please continue to support Tesla, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys on Tesla Tuesdays every week. And let's get excited about the next room with Josh's Blonde and Bradford. Oh, wait, so we have a request. Wait, we have a couple speaker requests. Let me take Xander first.
We're opening a can of worms.
Well, Xander, yeah. We can cut it off in a minute, but see if Xander has something he wanted to say.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Xander.
Hey, quick comment. I know there's
and Josh, Josh T, I don't think we're gonna have time for you, so you might want to come to the next room. Go ahead, Xander.
Quick comment. So I know there's a lot of spaces that just retitle their room names and just every hour just have a new speaker come up or co-host and do that. I don't know if that might be a better option instead of just closing and opening the rooms. It makes people have to leave, and you might not get the same traction. Just a thought.
Makes sense to me, Bradford.
We'll do it this way this week, and we'll put our heads together and see how it goes.
Okay, so with that, Xander, I had the same thought, by the way. I just didn't say it. So I want to thank, and Josh T, I'm sorry, but we're going to open a new room, and please raise your hand for the next room. I just think we're basically, Bradford, are we out of time, or should we give Josh a chance?
Yeah, we're out of time, but the main idea with ending the room is to make it more shareable, so it's not one huge block. But we'll consider both ways.
All right, thanks for setting this up, Bradford.
Thank you, Warren.